Welcome, everyone. Welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for joining our session today. Tell authentic stories, the power of genuine listening and ethical narratives. If you'd like to enable closed captioning for this session, please know it is available by clicking the button labeled CC on the bottom of your Zoom screen. My name is Ilyasa N. Shabazz. I use she, her pronouns, and I am the Senior Operations and Communications Director at Philanthropy Together. We are a global initiative dedicated to bringing the collective giving movement together with programming and offerings like We Give Summit. This is our 4th annual event, and wow, just wow. The energy and inspiration that I felt in the first few sessions truly has been something. I'm still processing and sitting with something that Baratunde Thurston said in our opening session, which is the idea that we are divided is greater than the reality of our division. And this is so important and something for us to be reminded of as we get ready to dive in and talk about genuine listening and authentic storytelling. Today's session is interactive. We will have breakouts where you'll have a chance to meet others who are in this space and share a story. We also ask that you engage with us in the chat throughout the session. You can ask questions as they come up, make comments as ideas are sparked, and please be mindful of our We Give Summit community guidelines. Let's hold each other with compassion. Let's listen deeply and share the mic, and let's root ourselves in principled struggle. Stay with us until the end. Like all of our We Give Summit sessions, one of you will win a book of your choice written by one of this year's We Give Summit speakers. And with that, let's get started. I'd like to first give a big shout out to the amazing Masha Cherniak. She was scheduled to co-present with me today. And let's all send Masha a lot of love. Let's put it in the chat. Let's send her lots of love and well wishes. She's unable to join us, but she has been key in shaping the discussion that we're going to be having today on storytelling. So to kick us off, I'd like to share more about myself. I have worked in nonprofit marketing for more than 10 years, all in human services organizations. I studied journalism in undergrad, and I remember either my sophomore or junior year taking an ethics class and making a pledge. We had to, they printed it out, we signed it. It was to always write with fairness and accuracy. And for me personally, integrity is one of my core values. And so I took that pledge very seriously. And I knew that by selecting a career in communications, that I had a responsibility to those whose stories I will tell and to those who I'm telling stories to. And so that's why I'm really proud for us to be having this conversation today, where we're talking about listening and ethical storytelling. There's power in storytelling because stories help us make sense of the world. They expand our ideas of what's possible, and they shape and influence our beliefs and our values. They're how we learn, how we heal, how we build relationships. Going back to that quote from Baratunde Thurston, stories are a powerful bridge. They can break down barriers, they build deep empathy and understanding, and they have the power to connect, to unite, and inspire us to take action and to build the world of our dreams. And the best part is that we all possess this ability to tell stories. It's a powerful tool. It's completely accessible. It's no cost. We all have a story to tell. And so today we're going to focus on sharing our own personal stories and practicing the art of deep listening and also asking for consent. And so to kick us off, I am so happy to be able to share a word from Tracy Green Washington with CoThink. Tracy has joined us today, so thank you, Tracy. And I invite you all to listen to this story from Tracy.
I love that Philanthropy Together has created such an intentional space through the session to focus on the power of using your voice in our testimony and what can be possible from genuine listening and authentic storytelling. Hi, my name is Tracy Green Washington. I'm the founder of CoThink. We are a giving circle led by BIPOC leaders and are supported by co-conspirators, all working collectively to drive systems change across Western North Carolina. See, we're committed to deeply anchoring our work in 4 strategic pathways. There's healing together, there's access to resources, there's capacity building, And lastly, there's systems change. See, we firmly believed as a collective that storytelling is such an important and critical lever to systems change, and that one of the most powerful conditions that you can shift in doing this transformational work is shifting mental models. See, these are the stories that we tell each other, that we tell about ourselves. They're full of bias, right? Unconscious bias. And it keeps us siloed and unable to tell a more complete story that ultimately then creates barriers. But if interrupted, can be the key to our collective impact, our collective liberation, and the ability to amplify the powerful voices, the medicine, the innovation of the communities we come from and have the privilege to walk alongside of by doing this work together. See, we also believe that storytelling through tools such as ripple effect mapping, which is this participatory evaluation tool that we use, videos, communication strategies, and partnerships with newspapers and the press can be effective when there are shared values, when there's shared respect and authentic listening where bias is interrupted. So, in this spirit, I've been asked to share an example of when potential harm can occur when there isn't genuine listening, when there's not aligned values and authentic storytelling, and when there's not a commitment to curiosity to tell our stories in an authentic way. For us at CoThink, we've been very intentional about having agency and autonomy over telling and sharing a CoThink story, and partnering with our members and grantee partners to ensure that these stories are told with respect and honors their work, their humanity, and who they are at the very core. But due to previous challenges in our community, with our local newspaper, the Asheville Citizen Times, we had to do something a little bit different. See, they refused to use the language that we as a collective agreed to use to identify our membership's racial identity in a press release that we shared with them. They cited that they had followed acceptable journalism guidelines. We told them that it was out of alignment with the language that we used, but they did not want to listen. So we decided, number one, to not allow the Asheville Citizen Times to cover any of our work or write pieces around CoThink. We also decided and consented together that we would only work with values-aligned local outlets that would honor our language. And number three, we decided we just publish our own press releases on LinkedIn and other social media outlets. So it brings us to today, and I'm going to fast forward us to 2021 when we were asked by the newspaper to do a piece after they had covered another member in such a beautiful way. I talked to the community member and they felt satisfied by the experience. We had a meeting with the journalist and set clear parameters for the story. We wanted to review it before it was published in the paper to offer any suggestions and also ensure accuracy. And number two, we wanted to make sure that we could use our language that best described our work, and the journalist agreed. The journalist also asked to interview a CoThink member with a powerful story, and there was one person that was always top of mind, Mr. Tony Shivers. Tony is a local community leader that's working on the cutting edge of initiatives for returning citizens. He's working with youth using mindfulness practices, and he's a long-term CoThink member. But unfortunately, even after that agreement, we did not hear from the journalist. We only saw the release of the article and its title. It was titled From Drug Dealer to Healer. The story exploited Tony's experience, it created harm, and it created a false narrative about who he was in our community and in the world. See, it attempted to boil down his impact and his magic to a biased, narrow, and I wouldn't say racist headline. And lastly, only briefly mention CoThink at the end as an add-on. As a result, we contacted Tony immediately and apologized and initiated a fumble towards repair process. See, all of us had become complicit in harming him, even though we didn't write the story. We'd asked him to speak to the paper and he trusted us. We contacted the journalist that only returned our calls after 10 messages and refused to make any changes. We contacted and used our social capital to get a colleague to arrange a conversation with the editor of the paper that ultimately defended the reporter in their right to report on what they liked. Ultimately, though, through pressure from several colleagues and phone calls, the editor did agree to change the story, but refused to take the story down. We worked with Tony to walk through the story, to consent to the changes, and delivered them to the paper. Even in the face of that work, they only made changes that were small and changed the title to From Difficult Past to Community Leader. Tony Shivers is ultimate co-think leader. See, the harm was done and the paper refused to retract the story. Consequently, we had to use our social media, consequently, we had to use our social media and relational capital to do the following. As a board member at Education NC, a statewide education newspaper with a huge local and regional and national following, I worked together with the executive director and the Ed NC team, and they created their own press release about Tony's work. See, they knew Tony, they knew his work, they knew how much of an impact he had in our community. We reposted the news story on social media, included the Asheville Citizen Times in the post, and we asked community members not to read the story by the Asheville Citizen Times, and we lifted up Ed and C's piece as a model for other journalists to report in a way that honors community, authentic storytelling, and genuine listening. Lastly, in true co-think form, we requested to buy an ad from the newspaper where we documented the incident and offered to pay the newspaper leadership team and editor for their time to participate in a national well-respected training for journalists and newspapers was grounded in journalism equity practices. The paper indicated that they could not print the ad and that the content did not fit their publication guidelines. I have to say, for folks that are listening to this story, that puzzled us. We sent several emails requesting a copy of the guidelines, and I have to say today, we have not received them or any responses to our requests. I share this story in service to the conversation that you're getting ready to have, to support the conversation with the hopes that it will spark greater awareness around the power of storytelling and narrative building, to build our muscles to be courageous and ask the hard questions, and to understand the importance of authentic storytelling and the power of getting it right. And when it doesn't align, using our voice in the Giving Circle movement as advocates to fumble towards repair when we've been complicit, and also to continue to think about and help people craft a story that they have agency over and autonomy over. Thank you for allowing me to share space with you today, these important and valuable lessons and learnings, and I bring full gratitude from the Co-Think family.
Tracy, thank you so much for sharing that with us. And I'm going to invite you up and welcome anyone to come off mute if immediately any questions or anything comes to mind. Listening to this example from Co-Think, it's such a strong example of why we need to have these conversations around ethical storytelling. And I also really appreciate you lifting up that it's shared responsibility. It's the people who are connecting others for these stories as much as it's those who are telling the story. And so just want to thank you and also open up the floor if there's anyone who has questions or would like to jump in before
Thank you, Eliasa.
Yeah. All right, so what I'd like to move to is around, what is ethical storytelling? And I'd like for us to dive into that. So we're going to share our screen and share just some key things. And we heard this throughout the example with Co-Think. And the first that I'd like to lift up is that stories are sacred. And we have to share them in a manner that respects the dignity and autonomy of individuals and our diverse communities. And with that, we have to be aware of power dynamics that exist. We also need to always ask for permission in sharing someone's personal story. We want to avoid perpetuating negative stereotypes, manipulation of facts, or sensationalism to grab attention. And we have a responsibility to mitigate risks and to make corrections if and when we get it wrong. And really all of this, when, we think about storytelling and these kind of guidelines for us to follow, it all comes down to listening. And so what does it mean to generously listen? And so on the next slide, we have for some guidelines when it comes to generous listening, and that's to listen with curiosity, with empathy and with compassion. You don't want to interrupt. You want to ask clarifying questions. Be fully present and experience the journey that someone who's telling their story is trying to take you on. Don't multitask by preparing your own remarks. So, like, really be present in that conversation. It's not thinking about what you're going to say next. And pay attention to your own body language. Are you engaged? Are you leaning forward as opposed to, or looking the other way? That's something to think about as you're generously listening. And so now I invite all of you to tell authentic stories and to listen generously. And so on the next slide, we're going to offer up a prompt. We want you to think about a time in your life that you were transformed. What happened? What did you learn? Who did you become? We're going to send you into breakouts, and they're going to be in groups of about 2 or 3. And we would like to ask you to practice your generous listening. Can you go to the next slide? If there are 2 people in your breakout, we'd like for each of you to talk for 6 minutes. If there are 3 of you, you can talk for 4 minutes and respond to that prompt. And some reminders, if you're the one listening, be genuine, listen deeply, and don't interrupt. And for those who are sharing, be vulnerable and have fun. Afterwards, we'll come back after you go into this breakout for the next 12 minutes, we'll come back and then you'll be invited to share a story from someone whose group you were in. So you're going to be telling someone else's story. And so remember those guidelines that we just went over. Be sure to ask for consent. And when we bring you back from your breakouts, we'll debrief and have a reflection. And so with that, our team is going to send us into breakouts. Welcome back. Okay, let's jump right into it. How did that feel? What did you learn? How was that?
Well, I'll share. It's Tally, and Guff, you got cut off right at the end, but it was lovely to get to hear from you. And I just loved it. I could do that all day.
Me too. I was in the room with Queen, and Queen was sharing about the stories in her room, and I was sharing about mine. And it felt deeply personal and deeply intimate. And yeah, I just loved it. Thank you, Queen, and thank you, Brittany, for sharing your story with me too. Thank you, Isis. Who else wants to join or to share? Sorry.
I can just say that I heard 2 wonderful stories, and both were transformative for the teller and also for me, because there were ways that I could connect to their experience and learn a little bit more about them and myself, and just feel that connection. It was really great.
I just want to echo, Maya, what you just dropped in the chat. You just took my thought out of my head. I can listen to y'all stories all day long. I find people incredibly fascinating. I'm always interested in, like, y'all, what y'all eating, where you live at, who was your mama, where your kids are. Like, maybe I'm nosy. I don't know. I can eat people for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. So y'all can tell me your stories all day long, and it fills my heart, and it makes me just feel even more connected just in this crazy world. So thank y'all for sharing your stories. It really makes you unique, and it's our superpower, y'all. So keep sharing more of it.
And I just wanted to add, I love that you said that. I think that it allows us to build these muscles of unlearning and relearning, particularly around curiosity. I think oftentimes the storytelling really forces us to slow down and really be intentional, both in our posture, what we're listening for. And I think it provides an opportunity for us to meet each other in the work and meet each other in each other's story in a way that I think is so important. I had the privilege to sit with Adele, and Adele, I really appreciated you being so vulnerable and so open. And what I heard from your story was the power, right? The power in this moment of using your voice in the face of noise or what other people may not be comfortable with, and how our stories can just be such a powerful tool to encourage other people to be courageous.
For me, what came up was just the piece about permission. I'm sure we all transitioned over to the call and we were like, oh, I didn't get permission. It became this thing. And it's sort of twofold. On one side, we get so inspired by someone's story that we just go and tell it, not out of malice, but out of just wanting to share it. And then on the other side, there's not telling a story because it's so personal. And instead of asking that person, can I share this? Because it could be really powerful. We just shut it down. We're like, too personal. We won't relay this. When in fact, maybe you'll get a yes, and there's an opportunity to tell something that was vulnerable, but can have a really positive impact for someone else. So that piece about such a pivotal part of the conversation and the opportunity to connect is grounded in something so simple, asking for permission. So thanks for highlighting that.
Yes. Thank you all for participating in and being active and engaging in this activity. There was something that I read recently that was saying that sometimes there are stories that are ready to be told versus being ready to be shared. And that I really had to think about that and what does that mean? And I do get it. There is a difference. Like, I could share someone's story, but there's power in someone telling their own story. And so as we craft our speeches and we think about, what we're putting on social media on behalf of others, think about the voice that it is coming from and the perspective that it's coming from also. And that's definitely something on this storytelling journey that has stuck with me. And to close us out, I'd love to share some other lessons learned just with ethical storytelling. And another is to stay rooted in your values. People want your respect and your solidarity on either end, whether they're being told a story or if it's a story being told about them. So hold your values close to you when it comes to storytelling. Speak from your personal experiences. And don't tell savior stories. Don't try to perpetuate an us versus them mentality. Us donors can help them, the community. We have the power and the money, they need us. Like, no, none of that. Storytelling isn't about charity. It's about love and partnership. And, Ty, when you came on, it's like you saying you're so curious and asking all of those questions, that comes from a place of love. And love is really at the root of storytelling and genuine listening. And I put a call out to all of us to think about messages that we are putting out into this world. There's a lightning talk this year titled The Power of Words. And I saw Gigi in here at some point. It is a phenomenal lightning talk. And I really encourage people to listen to that and just think about the language that we're using. People have a lot of motivations for why they join their work, why they engage, and they bring all of that into the stories that are being told. And so let's tell hopeful, powerful stories that will inspire people to take action. Let's use our voice, use our testimony, and do that in service of the missions that we hold near and dear to our hearts. So thank you all again for participating in this session. A big thank you to you, Tracy, for sharing your story. We also are going to be adding a story from Women's Giving Circle of Howard County to Hoover for you all to engage deeper and think more about ethical storytelling. Before we wrap up, please be sure to answer the 2-question poll. A recording of this session is available on the agenda. A big shout out to today's raffle winner, Tally Baratka. Our team is going to follow up with you where you'll be able to select a book by this year's speakers. And please stick with us because the conversation on ethics is continuing. As a nonprofit professional, I cannot wait for our next session on ethical volunteering. We have leaders from Volunteer Match, Big Brothers Big Sisters, Ellen MacArthur Foundation, and the Crisis Text Line joining us. So please head back to Hoover. Or if you're already in Whova, click back into your agenda and join the next session, Go Beyond Good Intentions, Engaging in Ethical Volunteering, which will start at the top of the hour. I'll see you all there. Thank you.